Hi everyone, a really warm welcome back to your Professional Diploma in Nutrition with Shaw Academy. You guys are now on Lesson 7 for Module 3, where we will be discussing an interesting topic of mindful eating. As I'm sure you've noticed in Module 3, my approach has been to split the more complex nutrition topics into two parts to try and help you understand these topics in a little bit more detail. To get us started on this fascinating topic, I'd like to share a quote with you from Eckhart Tolle. He explains that unease, anxiety, tension, stress, worry, and all forms of fear are caused by too much future and not enough presence. Guilt, regret, resentment, grievances, sadness, bitterness, and all forms of non-forgiveness are caused by too much past and not enough presence. So guys, I feel like the moral of this quote is to try your best to remain in the present. And as we'll soon learn, this is the premise of mindfulness and thus mindful eating. Our objectives for Lesson 7 include understanding our eating behaviors in a little bit more depth, including some of the reasons why when a person loses weight, it's also gained back really easily. We'll define mindfulness and we'll do a brief guided mindfulness meditation together. We'll then link this to mindful eating, and I'll end off the lesson by delving into some of the characteristics of mindful eating. With our objectives outlined, let's delve into part 1 of Lesson 7. I want you guys to cast your minds back to Module 2, where we discussed weight loss in a little bit more detail. Remember that we established that the obesity rates have skyrocketed in recent years. Our main concern with this is the impact that being overweight has on your morbidity or your risk of illness, especially chronic diseases, as well as your mortality or your risk of death. Both of these factors will have a profound impact on our already overburdened healthcare system and contribute to rising healthcare costs. We established that there is certainly no one-size-fits-all approach with regards to approaching this problem, and that in order for us to deal with it as effectively as possible, we need to apply a multi-pronged approach. Most diets have been shown to induce weight loss. So guys, that doesn't seem to be the problem. What does seem to be the issue is that people are unable to maintain their weight loss. In other words, they're not able to keep the weight off. So much so that after a year, only about half of those who lost weight were able to keep the weight off. And shockingly, after 3 to 5 years, less than 20% were able to maintain their weight loss. This means that a whopping 80% of people who lose weight will regain the weight lost over a 5-year period. Clearly, there is a problem that is not being addressed with regards to weight loss maintenance. Right. So now what we need to do is we need to understand why the weight is regained. And so let's have a look at some of the reasons why we eat. We know that food is essential for survival. We know how it's digested and absorbed and how it fuels every single cell in your body. We've learned which foods make better choices for good health, but what we have not yet discussed in great detail is what drives us to eat. Many of us are not in touch with our bodies, and we eat purely because we have been told to. You can think of this almost as a diet mentality. We eat certain foods at certain times because that's the way it's been done. Someone who explains this concept incredibly well is Dr. Michelle May. She's a medical doctor, a recovering yo-yo dieter, and an award-winning author for Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat, How to Break Your Eat, Repent, Repeat cycle. Throughout today's lesson and in the next lesson, I will be using snips from her TED Talk. For the full video, please go ahead and look at the links in your references. Right, so without further ado, let's go to Dr. Michelle May.
When you get into this cycle, the only way out feels like going on a diet. So think about this eating cycle when you are dieting. Why are you eating? According to the rules. You eat when the rules tell you. So what are some of the rules about when you should eat? You have to eat breakfast because breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And it is. Unless you've been eating all night, and then it's not that important.
So guys, that seriously sums up a diet mentality. It has an incredible impact on our intake. We're bombarded with information like eat this and not that. We're told that if we implement certain tips and tricks that we'll be healthier, happier, and thinner. What we should eat is dictated to us by various diets like keto or paleo, vegan, low carb, high fat, and as we've discussed before, various foods, food groups, and even nutrients are often demonized by these diets, and ultimately the world is gaining more and more weight, as you can see by this graph, guys. So clearly these diets are not working in the long term. One of the problems with these diets is the messages are inconsistent and in some cases may even be downright contradictory. Dieting over the years has been intrinsically linked with your sense of self. So when you regain the weight you lost, which remember is up to 80% of people, you feel like there must be something wrong with you. You feel like you have failed. Dr. Alexis Connerson explains it very well in her program, The Anti-Diet Plan, where she tells us that diets don't work. Your diet has failed you, not the other way around. Despite what diet culture wants you to believe, your body is not broken, even though they continuously try to convince you otherwise. The diet industry thrives on repeat customers, and they need you to buy into their next fad diet, which is going to be the one that will lead you to long-term success. Unfortunately, guys, this will probably not happen, and you will end up in a diet binge cycle, or as Dr. Michelle May puts it, an eat, repent, repeat cycle. We all know the drill from our first lesson together. You start a new diet, whichever one is the current flavor of the month or year. We allow the diet to dictate what we can and cannot eat, and we ignore our internal cues. Naturally, we feel deprived because we're not allowed to eat this or that, and feelings of deprivation lead to cravings and an intense urge to eat whatever we've been denied. In many cases, a person may then binge or overeat on the forbidden food, and they'll have feelings of being out of control. And when you want to regain control, you start your next diet. And once again, it promises you that it'll be the last diet you ever follow. But it's not. This is a traditional yo-yo dieting pattern, and it is frustrating, and it does not lead to long-term weight loss or long-term health. Of course, guys, hunger also plays a role with regards to our drive to eat. A tool that we often use to gauge your hunger is the hunger scale. On the one side, we have starving and ravenous. So these are signs that you are too hungry. A growling stomach and other symptoms of hunger can indicate that you're hungry and you should be getting ready to eat. Neutral feelings can be described as not feeling full, but also not feeling hungry. Your mind might be on other things and you might feel quite comfortable. This is the ideal place to be most of the time. When you feel full, you may be satisfied, meaning that you could potentially eat more, but if you did, you'd probably feel somewhat stuffed. The next step is when you have definitely eaten too much and feel too full. You may feel bloated and even nauseous. Often when you feel like you ate more than you needed, you may feel heavy and uncomfortable, and you generally just don't feel well. Although this is a very helpful tool to use, alone or used incorrectly, it really can't help us. If we all just ate when we were hungry and maybe more importantly, stopped when we were full, I doubt that we would have an obesity pandemic on our hands. Keep watching to understand how this can be implemented in a mindful eating plan. The truth is that what really makes eating worthwhile and what may be a potential driver for obesity is the pleasure that we get from food. This is an important evolutionary adaptation. If we didn't enjoy what we were eating, we wouldn't do it, and then we'd die from starvation. Eating for pleasure is also known as hedonic eating. Interestingly, the food industry has used this fact to drive consumption of certain foods. Many fast foods and ultra-processed convenience foods are developed using a concept called the bliss point. The bliss point is the amount of an ingredient, such as salt, sugar, or fat, which optimizes its deliciousness and therefore drives consumption. The pleasure of eating is best heightened when we use all of our senses. Our eyes, ears, nose, and mouth are all involved in our eating experience, and each contributes towards the enjoyment of a meal. Smell is the most important determinant of flavor of food, and it comes to our brains via the orthonasal and the retronasal pathways, and this is experienced when we breathe in and out respectively. What I want you guys to take note of here is that your smell or olfaction is processed differently to your other senses. It is closely linked to your limbic system, which are structures in your brain that link to your emotions and your memory. This may explain why certain smells or tastes can elicit pleasure. They can evoke nostalgia and almost instantly take us back to certain memories. A good example of this would be if you smell cinnamon apple pie and it immediately makes you feel good because it reminds you of your grandmother's baking on a rainy Sunday afternoon. This may be one of the reasons why hedonic eating is also linked to the next reason that we eat, and that is to cope with our emotions. Food is emotional to us. We form strong connections to certain types of foods over the courses of our lives based on how we felt when we ate them. Eating when we're feeling strong emotions, including positive ones, is not inherently bad, but as with most things, the dose does make the poison. Food shouldn't be the only way that you cope with life stresses or celebrate its victories. Unfortunately, when this is done often along with other triggers, it does form a habit loop, which can ultimately lead to overconsumption and weight gain. Let's explore the habit loop in a little bit more detail. A habit loop usually starts with a cue or a trigger. This could be a time, for example, eating breakfast because you've been told that it's the most important meal of the day. It could be a location. So, for example, if you want a muffin every single time you go to a specific coffee shop, or you continue to eat from a bowl of crisps that are placed in front of you at a party, you are eating because the chips are both visible and available. Your emotional state may be a trigger, so maybe due to the hedonic nature of eating, as we've learned, or other people can be a trigger. So a good example here, which I have used in my previous lessons, is that of alcohol. For example, when I'm out with a specific friend, I always tend to have an alcoholic drink. So going out with that person, in my mind, has become synonymous with alcohol. Thus, he acts as a trigger. The cue leads to a craving, which is essentially a powerful desire for something, which elicits a response. So, for example, if you're craving chocolate, the response would be to eat the chocolate, and afterwards we would experience pleasure or the reward. So the next time you encounter a trigger, your body will naturally create a craving as it gravitates towards seeking out a reward. The literature shows us that there is a strong association between binge eating, emotional eating, external eating, and eating in response to food cravings, and weight gain and weight regain after successful weight loss. Binge eating is characterized by a consumption of large amounts of food and a loss of control over eating. Emotional eating is characterized by the consumption of food in response to emotional arousal. External eating is characterized by eating in response to external food-related cues, so, for example, the sight or smell or taste of food. Food cravings have been shown to lead to obsessive thoughts about food and impulsive consumption of craved foods in some people, which then increases your risk for weight gain. And these eating behaviors are not typically addressed in weight loss interventions and may very well contribute to the lack of long-term intervention success. Even though in today's world we seem to be more connected to our health than ever before, there's literally an app for everything. We can track our moods, our sleep, our food records, and even our steps and exercise. The reality is that many of us have never been more disconnected from our own bodies and from our relationship with food. Does this kind of feel like you? We really do live in a very fast, tech-focused world, and it's really easy to be overcome by a never-ending to-do list of everything that you want to accomplish. Everybody else seems to be so busy and so productive, and we strive to keep up with the Joneses, even if it means that we're sacrificing things like rest or leisure. We multitask at meal times, we eat too quickly, or we completely forget to eat. We eat on the run and we ignore our internal and natural hunger and satiety cues. When we do eat, we eat until we feel overfull, or maybe we're not full enough because there's just simply not enough time. With all that we need to do, we often forget to check in on ourselves, especially when it comes to meal times. Once again, many of us have never been more disconnected from our own bodies or from our relationship with food. Enter mindfulness. Mindfulness is defined as the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. It helps us to tune into what we are sensing and experiencing in the present moment. It's the ability to pay more careful attention to our emotional body or our thoughts and our feelings, as well as our physical body, without judgment or expectation. If we dissect this a little bit further, we understand that judgment is our binary way of thinking that something is either good or bad, and an expectation is a strong belief that something will happen. Research suggests that being mindful can help us reduce our stress levels and can also increase our experience of positive emotions. So guys, it's pretty much a win-win situation. Experts posit that the key to mindfulness is awareness and being present with what we are feeling and doing in each moment. The concept may sound pretty self-explanatory, but it can be harder to implement than we may think. I want you to try recall the last moment you were truly alone. What did you do? Did you sit and notice your surroundings? Or did you distract yourself with chatting or playing videos on your phone, listening to music, or doing other activities like watching TV? The goal is to keep yourself in the present and observe and ponder the sensations that occur to facilitate a better understanding of one's current situation, rather than focusing on the past or on the future. Mindfulness has been defined as paying attention in a particular way. It helps us to facilitate a skillful response to a destructive behavior and psychological pain. It has been successfully studied in several populations, most notably in diabetes, cancer, HIV, mental health disease, and obesity. Applying a scientific approach to meditation began way back in the 1970s with Dr. Herbert Benson. He coined the term relaxation response, which is defined as your personal ability to encourage your body to release chemicals and brain signals that make your muscles and organs slow down and increase blood flow to the brain. Benson can largely be credited for demystifying meditation and helping to bring it into the mainstream by renaming meditation the relaxation response. His studies in the 1960s and 70s were able to show that meditation promotes better health, especially in those with hypertension. We then have Jon Kabat-Zinn, who further developed Benson's concept by introducing mindfulness therapy. The principles of mindfulness awareness have been incorporated into a variety of therapy modalities. Some of the most prevalent treatments include mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and specific mindful meditation training. Are you interested in finding out more about mindfulness? Why don't you do this mindfulness quiz, which draws on a mindfulness scale developed by researchers at LaSalle University and Drexel University. The goal is to answer how frequently you experience each of the 20 statements over the past week. I want each and every one of you to go and check this out and calculate your score. There's a tendency to believe that mindfulness should take place in a quiet room or that you need to know a special yoga pose in order to practice it properly. I want to show you guys that this is not true, and I invite you to sit with me for a brief 2-minute guided meditation thanks to the team at the Center for Mindful Eating. You can access more of their free meditations by following the link in your summary notes. And with that, let's go right into this guided meditation. Guys, enjoy.
Here are the instructions for a taste of mindfulness. Start by sitting in a comfortable position with an erect yet relaxed posture. Close your eyes or have a soft gaze down at the floor. Take a couple of deep breaths. Let your belly be soft and full as you breathe in, and expel all of the air as you breathe out. Gradually let the breath become natural and effortless. Feel the movement of the belly, the rib cage, and the chest in response to the air coming into and out of the body. Now scan your body from head to toe. Notice the current state of your body. Are there places of tension? Places that feel relaxed? What parts of your body feel warm or cool? Is the body energized or fatigued? Just notice what is present. Take your time. Pay particular attention to the sensations at the area of the stomach. Are there sensations of hunger, of satiety? How hungry or full are you? Are you thirsty? You might notice thoughts of judgment about your stomach. Just let those come and go. Next, notice what feelings are present. You might be feeling curious, angry, happy, frustrated, confused, or content. No matter what feelings are present, acknowledge them with curiosity and kindness. Notice what thoughts are passing through your mind. Let thoughts arise, exist, and pass away without getting caught up in the story of the thoughts as best you can. You might notice how the feelings and the thoughts are connected. If you are feeling restless, you might have thoughts about needing to get something done. Or if you're feeling angry, you might be having thoughts about someone who upsets you. Just notice what's present without judging. When you know what your body feels like, what feelings are present, and what thoughts are going through your head, you've dropped out of automatic pilot. For a couple of more moments, sit and breathe and experience what it means to be alive in this moment. When your mind gets lost in a story, bring your attention back to the passing sensations that are available in the present moment. Body, breath, sounds. It doesn't matter how many times the mind wanders. The important thing is to notice without judgment and bring your attention back. Each time the mind wanders and you notice it is a moment of waking up to the present. Notice that some things you experience feel pleasant and some not so pleasant. No matter what you're experiencing, allowing each moment to be exactly as it is and allowing yourself to be exactly as you are. Sitting, breathing, and simply being. And when you're ready, opening your eyes.
So are you guys feeling a little bit more mindful? I really hope that each and every one of you enjoyed that. I know that I truly did. Now that we know a bit more about mindfulness, how can we translate this into how we eat? Mindful eating can be defined as a non-judgmental awareness of physical and emotional sensations associated with eating. Once again, reiterating that a non-judgmental awareness is being aware of these sensations and not defining them as either good or bad. The focus is on your eating experience and more on how you eat rather than on what you eat. There are essentially 4 characteristics of mindful eating that I want to elaborate on today. The first is the awareness of your eating habits and the effect that this can have on your body. It is practicing awareness of your emotions as well as your physical hunger and satiety. It's using all your senses when choosing and experiencing your food. And lastly, it's acknowledging your response to food. Let's start by understanding how to become more aware of your eating habits. The first thing that I recommend is to slow down. Slowing down the pace of eating is the first step to eating mindfully. How many of us just gulp down our food while we're reading an email or watching a TV show? By slowing down, you have the luxury to concentrate on what you're eating, and this facilitates awareness. Another way of bringing your attention to your meal is to take a break between bites. Put your utensils down and pause as you complete your mouthful. Reflect on the food left on your plate before continuing your meal. It physically forces you to slow down and gives you a chance to check in with your body and see how full you are feeling. I want you to chew slowly, pay attention, and take a break to breathe. On a busy workday, it's all too easy to just inhale your food and move on to the next thing. Remember that mindfulness is about taking this slowly, and that includes the physical motion of eating itself. I want you to all make a conscious effort to chew slower than you usually would. You might be surprised by how much you actually taste and how much quicker you feel full. Next up, remove distraction from your eating environment. As I mentioned before, we live in a fast, tech-paced world, and with all that's going on around us, how can we be expected to concentrate on only one thing at a time? The truth is, you cannot fully appreciate your food unless it has all of your attention. So go ahead and switch off your electronics during meal times. Sit at the table and try your best to always eat from a plate. Don't stand in front of the fridge nibbling or over the pot. Create a ritual around meal times that act as a cue or a trigger for what is to come. The second characteristic is to practice awareness of your physical hunger and satiety, as well as your emotions. Identify if you're seeking out food due to hunger or due to an emotional response. Something that I would often say to parents at my practice when talking about mindful eating for their children is to ask, is your tummy hungry or is your mouth hungry? If it's the tummy that's hungry, then you need to make a point of actively registering this and act on it, as opposed to following a regimental diet plan. Use your hunger and satiety cues to guide your decision to begin and end eating. Spend some time getting to understand the cues your body is giving you to better act on them appropriately. With this in mind, also try your best not to wait until you are ravenous before you decide to eat. We don't always need to feel full, and being a little bit hungry is definitely okay. But guys, that being said, it's never okay to be starving. If you're seeking out food due to an emotional response, it's really vital that you identify the emotion and explore it in a non-judgmental way, remembering that your emotions or emotional eating does not need to fit into a binary box of good or bad. Sometimes eating does make us feel better, and it's usually the dose that makes the poison, and so we shouldn't do this frequently. I want you to go ahead and ask yourself, what am I hungry for during these times? If it is indeed food, then I want you to eat. But on the other side of the coin, you may also be hungry for sleep, love, affection, or any other emotion. So it's really important that you explore this. For For just a moment, I want to segue to a novel way of ranking your hunger and satiety using what has been called the EAT-moji. So we all know that emojis are ideograms and smileys that we use in e-messages and web pages. The folks at Food Insight have used this idea to help us, both the old and the young, identify how hungry we feel. Remember that you want to be at approximately a 5 or a 6 with regards to your hunger. And if you ever find yourself on the extremes of the scale, then once again, it's to be aware of this with no judgment and to facilitate a skillful response to any destructive behavior. So for example, if you're stuffed, I want you to assess what happened and try to change your behavior at the next meal. Don't berate yourself. What's done is done. Learn from it and move on. When trying to understand your hunger and satiety a little bit better, I want you to try your best to start with small portions. This can help you become more aware of the food that is actually on your plate, and it also increases your focus on what you're eating as well as how it is meeting your hunger needs. Remember that mindfulness does not end with the completion of your meal. Once you are done and feeling satisfied, I want you to take a moment to consider how you are feeling now that you've eaten. You must listen to your body and take note of how eating has created different sensations as well as emotional reactions. The next mindful eating characteristic is to eat with all your senses engaged. Choose to eat food that is both pleasing and nourishing by using all your senses whilst you are eating. Look at your food and notice its colors. Are there any markings on it? What's its shape and its size? How does it feel when you touch it? Is it crunchy or creamy? Is it dry or moist? I want you to smell your food. What does it smell like? Does it perhaps remind you of anything? Does it bring back any emotions, remembering the link between smell and your limbic system, and allow it to transport you back in time? And of course, what does it taste like? Describe it in terms of our 5 tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, or umami, or a savory flavor. Occasionally, what may happen is you may feel a bit disenchanted by your meal or by the food that you're eating. I know this has happened to me once. I bought a chocolate that I used to love eating as a child. I took my time to savor every bite, imagining that it would be as good as it was when I was younger. Literally one bite in, I realized it was definitely not how I remembered it. It had a waxy feel in my mouth and the chocolate just didn't melt. It was definitely not as rewarding as I had imagined. Now, if I had just gobbled it down, I would have probably felt disappointed and maybe even a little bit guilty for eating something I didn't enjoy. And this may have even pushed me into a bit of a diet binge cycle. But by engaging my senses, I avoided that. Once you've swallowed your food, I want you to visualize and understand how it's moved into your digestive tract. Remember that we have learned about these processes, and I want you to imagine and visualize how the food fuels your body with energy to complete your daily tasks. Things that can help you respond appropriately to your hunger and satiety cues include creating time to plan. I want you to prepare yourself for success. I want you to think about the week ahead and plan accordingly. Start by creating a meal plan. Be realistic and choose meals that you know that you have the skill and time to create. You can use our handy 7-day meal planner template, which you can download as part of your Module 1 starter plan to get you started. Remember, guys, this is what it looks like. Next up, you'll create a mindful eating shopping list. As you write down the additional ingredients that you need, I want you to take some time to consider the health benefits of each ingredient, as well as how each ingredient can be repurposed in various dishes. Be creative, and each week you can feature a different ingredient to ensure that you do indeed have a varied and healthful diet. When we have a busy schedule and we haven't planned for our meals, that's when we turn to fast food and highly processed convenience foods that do not nourish our bodies. Once again, remember that indeed the dose does make the poison. Having fast food occasionally, especially if it's eaten mindfully, can definitely be part of a healthy eating pattern. However, it's when this happens more often than not that we will start to have problems. Having a mindful shopping list means nothing if you go to the shops hungry. This increases your likelihood for mindless and impulsive buys. Remember to try and introduce mindfulness into all aspects of your food journey. In addition to this, I also want you to take some time to choose your food with intention. This is an extension of thinking about the health benefits and variety of ways that you can use the ingredients. I want you to take some time to explore how your food came to be from the farm to your fork. You can ask yourself questions like, where do you think your food comes from? How does your food grow? And what do you think it needs to help it to grow? How did your food get to the supermarket? And why do you think it's important to think of these things? Okay, guys, so I'm obviously not going to give you the answers here. This is something that you need to explore within yourself and in your own context. And lastly, take a moment to reflect on how you plan to prepare and cook your meals. How do you enjoy eating these ingredients? A really great example that I like to use here is that of butternut. When I was younger, my mom would cook the butternut on the stove by boiling it in water, and then she'd mash it and add sugar to sweeten it up. I could never become accustomed to eating it like this. I really didn't like it. When I moved into my own house, I realized that there are so many different ways to eat butternut and so many different dishes that I could prepare using it. I experimented in the kitchen with different herbs and spices and cooking methods until I found a way that I really enjoyed. Now, I literally look forward to eating butternut, and it's a vegetable that I once claimed to hate. So taking a little bit of time to think about the preparation and cooking methods can make all of the difference. Essentially, mindful eating can help you to have a more satisfying eating experience. The last characteristic is to acknowledge your response to food again without judgment. It's only when you do this that you can truly explore your likes and dislikes and understand your cravings and preferences. Use all the characteristics of mindful eating that we've learned about today to help you to understand these responses and make sense of them. Take note of your emotional and your physical responses before a meal, during a meal, and after a meal. And once again, do this all without judgment. There is no right or wrong answer here. Guys, with all this in mind, let's discuss what's coming up in our final lesson for Module 3. In Lesson 8, we will be discussing the mindful eating cycle. I'll teach you more about the eating cycle assessment that you can complete online. We'll look at some scientific benefits with regards to mindful eating, including binge eating, weight loss, and diabetes. And we'll end off our next lesson learning more about the raisin meditation. So I know that's definitely something I found incredibly fascinating to do, and I'm so excited to do it with you guys. Let's recap what we've learned today. We now know that we eat for a variety of reasons, and not all of them are physiological. Many of us are indeed eating mindlessly. Mindfulness therapy has been successfully implemented in a variety of settings, and mindful eating has 4 main characteristics which we explored in more detail, including the awareness of our eating habits, practicing awareness of your emotions, physical hunger and satiety, using all your senses when you choose and experience your food, and also acknowledging your response to food. Guys, that is a wrap for Lesson 7. Keep going, you are almost there. For today's challenge, I would like each and every one of you to create a mindful eating shopping list, and I want you to use it next time you go shopping for groceries. I want you to take a picture of it and share it on Instagram or Twitter with the hashtag #SureNutrition. And guys, you are obviously also welcome to tag me in that as well. I am at Abby the Dietitian. Guys, a huge thank you for completing this lesson for me. I hope that you guys are all feeling a little bit more enlightened when it comes to mindful eating. I really look forward to seeing you for Lesson 8. Keep safe, keep well, and I will see you next time.